Welcome, Bronco Nation, to another exciting video, and not just Bronco Nation, but college football nation as a whole. Today, we're talking, you saw the title in the video, we're talking about is NIL potentially destroying college football? Is it a good thing? Are there negatives that can be improved upon? Is the system overall just not something that we can recover from? Or is there a way forward that can make it a better process for the athletes and for the institutions as well? So is NIL destroying college football? And what are some of the ways that it can be changed so that the sport can potentially here also be saved and athletes can benefit? So to get a better perspective on that, I have brought on what should be a very familiar face to Boise State fans, Winston Venable. For those of you who are joining from other collegiate sports backgrounds that aren't Boise State fans and may not be familiar, Winston Venable was a Boise State linebacker from 2009 to 2010, 116 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a touchdown. That touchdown being an interception versus Fresno State. Then he had time in the NFL and in the CFL, and then he came back and he coached at Boise State for 2 years in 2020 to 2021, and now he's involved in the financial side of things. So he has a very, very deep background that is going to be very, very applicable. Oh, and before all of that, he was in the JUCO levels as well before he came to Boise State. So he has seen the college football world and football in general at every single level in every way that it can be played. And so he has a wealth of experience, and he's been very vocal on Twitter, if you follow him there, when it comes to NIL and how it impacts the athletes and how it's being run. So I wanted Winston to come on today. We're just going to tackle this problem head on. It's, of course, like I said, the biggest question facing college athletes and college fans out there. So Winston, thanks so much for coming on, man. It's awesome to have you back on again.
I appreciate it. No, I'm looking forward to reconnecting with you and being part of the show again.
Like Winston just referenced there, he has been on before. He helped me preview the 2023 season from a defensive side. In that one, we went in the first 20 or so minutes, we talked about Winston's career at Boise, how he got to Boise and the incredible time there, obviously during the golden age of Boise State football. We're not going to do that today. We want to jump right into tackling this problem head on, especially with potentially a lot of viewers that aren't Boise State fans and probably wouldn't care about that side of things. However, make sure you go back and watch that. It's a great discussion of those early days of Boise State football and of Winston's journey. A lot of personal stories told. I'll put a link in the description for Boise State fans or anybody else who wants to check that out. But let's just jump right into the NIL side of things. You heard me rattle off your career there, and it is a very impressive career. Again, seeing football at every level in multiple countries, how it can be played, how the sport can be approached as both a player and then also as a coach. And now you said you worked on the financial side and also helping some student athletes as well on that end. So your experience, how has your experience as a player at all these different levels, as a coach, and now in the financial side impacted your perspective of NIL?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that perspective that I have really, comes from the professional experience. For me, I really am looking at the NIL landscape and the college landscape as a new era of professional football, professional athletics. And that's kind of where I draw my thoughts on, and that's where I draw my, like I said, my experience will come from is just what was it like for me as a professional athlete? What is it like for the professional athletes that I work with now? How do they carry themselves? What's that mindset like? And how that translates and is similar to what these college athletes are going through.
Well, and like you said there, it is a professional athlete system. I know coaches always like to talk about athletes being professionals and how you apply your work ethic on the field. But now, in the fact that money is involved, athleticism in general is a profession. You are actually making money playing sports now. And obviously that is a recent change, not something that you obviously dealt with back in the day where you could get, kicked out of school for accepting a side of small fries from somebody. So now, obviously, with the new world of college football, before we start talking about how NIL is actually being handled, simply the concept of NIL, as someone who didn't get to partake in it, part of a
Yeah.
team that probably, I mean, that Boise State team, so many first and second round NFL draft picks, if NIL was back then, Boise State would have been making bank, Kellen Moore, Doug Martins, yourself, all those guys. So as someone who didn't get to partake in it and now has come through the ranks and seen in football these different levels, what is your just stance on NIL as a construct, not necessarily how it is being applied today? Positive, negative?
Yeah, I think it's positive overall. I think the growth and where we've gotten today, where athletes are able to, generate some income for themselves, I think that's awesome. I think big picture wise, with that, it comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of things to be aware of, right? And going back to that mentality and mindset of, being a professional, you are now making that money. And I think when NIL started in 2021, it looked a certain way than it looks now. And I think that's the stuff that I've been able to identify is just, in 2021, you had this authentic NIL where you could really go partner up with a business and do a little promotion and some content for the business. And then all of a sudden, collectives get involved, and now we're at this revenue sharing. So there's all sorts of growth that has happened. But at a base level, I think it's positive that players are able to take advantage of their name, image, and likeness. I just think that they have to be well prepared with what that comes with. And from a financial lens, it's very interesting to see, once you start generating some money and some income, do you know about taxes, things like that? Are you in a position now making this money where you may have to have a plan to manage it? So there's all sorts of new responsibilities that I didn't have to deal with as a college athlete that, I think guys need to be aware of. And it's a whole nother landscape. It's in a whole nother world that these guys are dealing with, a whole nother responsibility that, it can be scary out there for the most part as far as what these guys are getting themselves into. But with the right protection and guidance, I think it's a positive thing.
So obviously, again, I think we're both in this camp. Neither of us are anti-NIL. We like the concept of NIL. I think it's a long time coming for athletes to be able to profit off of their skill set on the field in the similar way that the TV stations and everybody else. It's not like it's not college football is not a non-profit. So people are profiting off of them. And I think
Yeah.
that it is right and just that these athletes are getting the opportunity to make that money back. However, we both have concerns about how NIL is being applied today. Can you speak to that? Do you think that, for first off, kind of bigger picture, how detrimental is the current NIL system to the sport of college football? And then just what are some of those negatives that cause you to have concerns about how NIL is being handled right now?
Yeah, I think it's the lack of structure, right? I mean, I think the bottom line, it's the lack of structure. I think that there's a lot of money being thrown at these kids. There's contracts being put in their face, and they're signing things without knowing family members, parents, guardians. It's an evolving space that's changing daily. And like for instance, right now, I mean, guys are in training camp working hard, and there's new rules coming out each week, right? I like to say that, they're the NCAA really is, flying this plane right now, but they're also building it at the same time. Mid-air, this thing is getting built, and there's all sorts of different players in the game, right? And going back to just that professional side, I think as long as players are aware of the business and the shift and the change going on around them and they have education, then they'll be setting themselves up to take advantage of it in the right way. I always want to make sure that they're not getting taken advantage of and that they can take advantage of the new situation that they're in. But it's very hard. Like you said, I mean, it's changing every day.
Well, I think one of the big negatives that's been identified at, kind of the national level is the involvement of collectives. I think most people agree, like, hey, if Lithia Ford of Boise wants to have Ahmed Hassanin and Genty come over and drive a truck around and be in an ad, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Yeah, you're being paid because you're a college athlete and that's why you're known and you're now using your name as your likeness. Or hey, you're in a, college football video game and so you should have some of the money coming from that. All those kind of things make sense. I think the thing that raises flags and warning signs for most people is when you have collectives, like Texas has a collective that pays every offensive line $50,000, whether they're starting or not, to come and play at Texas. And I think that is the point that some of this, we'll talk about here in a moment, but some of the newer legislation, well, not legislation, but changes that are coming out of these groups that manage and have oversight over college football, they're kind of targeting that. Would you agree that collective involvement is something that has some negative downturns to how NIL is managed?
Yeah, I think 2021, like we said, authentic NIL. You go get that partnership with Lithia Ford, great. The local mom and pop store, great. You come up with a partnership. I still have, some things there where is this big business or even a small business? Are they the ones driving a contract and putting that contract in front of the player? And does the player have any guidance on getting that contract reviewed. Like an NFL player may have a marketing rep, may have an agent, may have a lawyer that can review that contract and make sure that it's in the player's best interest. So I still think even when NIL started, there was still some red flags on, hey, let's make sure these players are protected with just the contractual agreements. And is it in their best interest or is it in the business's best interest? And when you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds, I mean, that raises some flags, right? Just to make sure that they are being protected. But like you said, once collectives started getting involved, now the game is changing a little bit, right? And that became, I think, really where it became a little bit messy. It became more of that pay for play and started to go outside of what was originally built or tried to be built with this authentic NIL. It became a way that donors and boosters could drop a bunch of money, the collectives could collect this money, and then ultimately the universities were running the collectives, right? And they are the ones distributing that money. So how does that relate to the actual NIL, the name, image, and likeness of this player? I'm not too sure. It seemed more like a salary. And going back to it, if now it's a salary, how are these kids protecting themselves with the salary that's being negotiated or not, or the contract that's being put in their face?
Well, obviously, there have been some recent changes to try and maybe curb, especially the power of these collectives. Because I think, again, everybody would like there to be NIL, but have some kind of common sense rules about the process. And the collective process makes it very, very, very messy. So there's a couple of things, obviously, that came out recently. The first one was the House versus NCAA settlement. So the House versus NCAA settlement basically opened up the door for revenue sharing with the colleges sharing up to 22% of their revenue with the student athletes directly. And again, this was an opt-in deal. Not everybody's required to do it, but it's an opt-in. All the former Power Five programs, to include the Pac-12 that Boise State is joining, have all opted in, and then some schools across the country are opting in either as conferences or individually. Do you see this as a positive move? Again, it's different, right? It is somewhat of a salary. The schools paying the players directly. Do you see it as a positive move, and what can be done to protect the players in this situation where they are now getting paid directly by the schools?
Yeah, what's interesting is I don't see it a whole lot different. I think that those contracts are starting to change a little bit and what's inside of them compared to the collectives. But honestly, like I mentioned earlier, I think the universities had a lot of power within the collectives, right? And I think that now it's just a different entity that's writing the check.
Hmm.
But ultimately, I really see the university and revenue sharing very similar to just an addition to the collective, and that paycheck is just coming through the university, not through this other entity, to be honest with you.
Do you believe that this move could kind of hurt some of those teams that are outside of the big money conferences, the G6, whatever they're being called, outside the SEC, Big Ten, Big 12, ACC? Do you think that this move could hurt some of those teams that don't have the same revenue generation capabilities and the ability to motivate and pay players in the same way that those schools do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the revenue sharing when they came up with that 20.5 million cap, right? And I think that that's a pretty cool thing to have in place. Whether you reach that cap or you don't, it's a cap, right? And go for it, try to raise money, try to divvy up that rev share, that revenue in a certain way to help impact your athletes, right? And give them some dough, if you will. But I think now that the collectives are still in place, and I know that there's been some verbiage and some rules just recently about the valid business purpose, which is interesting that now all of a sudden there's a valid business purpose because when NIL and these collectives started going, they would be attached to the players going to events or showing up to do the promotion. And I think you really started to see that fade away and fade away and fade away. And that's why I mentioned it's really pay for play and what it was. So now there's this big deal on, valid business purposes. And I like that, right? But there's no cap to that. And I still think that universities or collectives are going to find a way, and they have to, right? Because it's a very competitive business now that they're going to find all sorts of ways around dealing with that. And there's going to be some schools like in the G6 or what you call that are going to struggle with that. They're not going to be able to reach that 20.5, and their collective's only going to be able to do so much. Take Boise State for an example. I mean, we've only been a university for so long. We don't have the lineage of donors and boosters and all these guys. I think they'll end up not running out of money, but how many checks can they cut, right? So you really got to try to get outside of the start of NIL and collectives. And I think people were apt to cutting some checks and building those collectives up. And now it's going to be interesting to see how the long game plays with that. But now that you have rev share with the collectives, I still think it's a little bit messy, and it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out in the long term.
I think there is an element here that could potentially benefit some group of five or sorry, group of six type programs, in that these power universities, the thing that sets apart a Notre Dame or an Alabama isn't necessarily their starting lineup, it's their depth. It's the
Mhm.
fact that when their first string wide receiver needs a break, their second string wide receiver is even better than any of the starters you have on your roster that you're facing. And that's why you see teams like Boise State and or others, group of six teams, will come in and be competitive with those programs for the first, half or so, and then they pull out the win in the back end, like we saw Boise State versus Washington a few years back. So now, though, with the NIL and the money salary distribution, the way that this is going, the top players are demanding that top money, that's starters. Those second, third string guys, they're not making that same money. Now they have an opportunity to go to a smaller school, still a big name like a Boise State. Go to a team like that that has their own, they've opted in their revenue sharing and settlement. They have they were able to pay Genti a lot of money. They have the ability to generate revenue, not maybe at the same level as like an Oregon would for a starter, but for a guy that's second or third string not making very much can come over and make a lot more money at the group of six level. And so I personally think that you are going to see, yes, the Power Four will take away the cream of the crop of the group of six. But at the same time, the group of six is going to take away from that depth of the Power Four, which is going to filter out, maybe take a little while to build themselves back up in the group of six and then come back to the Power Four. And so I think there's going to be this shifting of power between the different conferences. While you may lose your top guys, there'll be other guys coming in, and those other conferences are going to lose what made them the strongest, which was that depth of their reserves. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think
No,
that's
I
valid
to-
at
no, I
all?
to- no, I totally hear you on that, and I think I just go to those guys that you're talking about, those depth players, and that's why I think college coaches they talk about retention, 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 and where are those big Five conferences, Power Four conferences? Where are they looking at to, which is a big deal now, poaching players and the transfer portal and all those type of things. So, how well can you develop? How well can you build that chemistry? How can you get your players to buy in, which is so important to keep them, right? Because ultimately, those guys you're talking about, they will be the next star. And if their buddy's making this amount of money, or if that's something that they value, then their eyes may be turning other ways. And I think that will always have, the group of five conference, the G6, that will have those guys on edge a little bit, right? Because hey, we want to develop these guys and we want to sink our claws in them to keep them here and retain them. And it's just a whole new monster. It's going to be very challenging, but I totally agree with you on that. I think the landscape will be it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next couple years. And bottom line, what's important to the players? What do they value? And what kind of chemistry can you build? And that's one thing that I think may also be a factor is when you can retain your players and build that chemistry, those are what creates championship teams. When you always have a cycle of new players and new players, I understand it. I mean, that's what's happening at the pro level. It's a new team every week, if you will, with roster cuts and all that type of stuff. But I think the guys that have that core and that nucleus of people that believe in their school and their program and have been there for a year or two, those are the guys that end up staying around. Like you've seen Boise State be able to retain some of their guys. They're bought into what they're doing here. They love it. They appreciate it. They value being developed. And if you can hold on to those guys, now you have them be the stars and you got a pretty good product on the field.
Well, if you were in charge of the system today, and you had the ability to yay or nay and do whatever you wanted to with the NIL system as it is, what would you do to fix it? What would be your moves that you think would make the system the maximum level of benefit for both the athletes, the institutions involved, and the fan bases involved as well, getting to actually watch a product that's fun and players that are committed to their team? What would you change? What would be your overarching biggest hit points?
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot to dive into, but one is trying to standardize these contracts, right? I mean, if you look at, I don't want to. I know that the NCAA is not the NFL, but if you look at the NFL model, if you look at professional sports and then you look at the NCAA, having a standardized NIL contract would be awesome, right? All the schools have their own ways of doing things right now. It's kind of a free for all for what these NIL contracts look like. I think, a process to certify agents and reps would be very helpful because I think that because it's a new era of professional sports, professional football, that these players need guidance. And within that, I also think there needs to be some type of mandatory education. You go through rookie symposium in the NFL, and there's all sorts of stuff from financial literacy to mental health to just having this well-rounded support around these players. I think those are kind of the main things that I would go with. And then ultimately, some type of players association, somebody that can give these players a voice. The players have a voice for themselves. If you look at the NFL or professional sports, there's a CBA, right? And that CBA, and I know you're going to get into the whole employee talk and all that, but a CBA, it really lays out the structure for these athletes, anywhere from their pay structure to injury grievances to just, I mean, you name it. That's why these CBAs are 400, 500 pages because it really goes into depth on how the business is operating. And now that this is a business, it just needs more structure. And I think getting to that point, understanding professional models, and getting to that point where these players are supported with a team outside of the universities, outside of the NCAA, to make sure that people have their best interest is going to be really important.
I think that everybody is dragging their feet because they want things to be the way that they were, and but Pandora's box is open. You cannot go back, you cannot put it all back in, and they don't want to go to a professional model. But again, the box is open, and with this new guidance, especially that when it comes to revenue sharing, I mean, athletes are getting paid to play college sports. They're
Yeah.
getting paid for the name, image, and likeness, but they're also getting paid to be athletes at their institutions. And so you can drag your feet and you can close an eye and try to pretend that things are the way they were and try to make them as close to that as you can. It's never going to work. It's going to make it harder for athletes. It's going to hurt athletes. It's going to hurt institutions that are in this gray area and not able to compete because there's no laid out solid solidified rules. And if you wait too long, if you drag this on too long, you are going to create a system that is so murky that you're going to start losing interest from the fan base as well, because they're
No,
going to start to check out. And everything is about momentum. And even in sports, it's all about momentum as well. And when you lose momentum, when you lose buy-in, it is hard to get that back. And so if I was in charge today, I would kind of go along with what you're saying here. I would say make a decision, stick with that decision, and create a system that makes sense with the world that we're living in right now. And that world that we're living in right now is semi-professional athletes playing in college football. And again, that is just where we're at. And so you got to adapt with it and create a system that works for everybody, that works for the App States of the world, that works for the Alabamas of the world, and everybody in between, and creates a world where players from the JUCO level all the way up have an opportunity to make money in a way that makes sense and also still have ties to their institutions. And I think there is a way forward with it, but you have to just bite the bullet, accept that is a professional world, and move forward.
yeah, no, I think you hit it. It's being professionalized, and like I said earlier, it's all shifting and changing around these players, and they're head down grinding, and this whole landscape is shifting around them, and it's being professionalized. And what does that take from a player advocate standpoint? What does that take from a player standpoint? Carrying yourself like a pro, building a team out around you of support. It's mind-boggling that now I think August 1st, just a day or just yesterday, now these high school athletes can receive their revenue share contract. And I'm like, okay, is that being sent to coach? Is that being sent to mom and dad? Is that being sent to the player who is 17 years old? And they're probably the first contracts they've ever seen, right? And we're talking about some of these athletes with significant amount of money, whether it's 20 grand, 100 grand, 5 million grand. I mean, 5 million, it's a lot of money and a lot of responsibility for young athletes to deal with. And when you look at that pro model, they're not dealing with that on their own. They're dealing that with a team of support, with people that understand the landscape, understand the legal side of it. So that's kind of where I always just draw back to the professional athletes that we've worked with. It's, would they ever receive a contract from a general manager and sign it right away? No, they probably have that contract sent to their agent, and their agent would review it with whether he's a lawyer or they have a lawyer on the team, and they would get back to the general manager. It scares me that 17, 18, 21-year-olds are sitting down in front of general managers or head coaches and discussing their salary, because that's just not what goes down in the professional ranks, right? So we just, from a player standpoint, I think there's a lot of things to be aware of and make sure that you're supporting yourself and you have the support from people that can help you manage this new business.
Before we end here, and this has been a great discussion about this new world of college football. Anybody interested in continuing to hear Winston's perspective? BJ said that he'll be joining the Bronco Nation news team again as a part-time. So you
Yeah.
can look forward to that. It was great when you were on there in the past. So there'll be more Winston Venable talk coming. Make sure you subscribe to Bronco Nation News on their 24/7 site to hear all that. But before we end here, and you just gave kind of a great little spiel there to athletes, is there anything else that you would have advice that you would give to upcoming athletes when they're approaching this world of college sports that is constantly changing and very different from the one that they grew up watching as a kid?
Yeah, I would just say, start asking questions, pause before you get a contract put in front of you. Make sure you understand it. Don't feel pressured to sign anything. You have every single right to ask for help, whether that's mom, dad, agent, any type of rep that you have outside of this world that you're in, outside of your university. I really believe that you just have to be well aware of what you're getting yourself into. And if you have a professional athlete that just ask the questions, ask them how they handle that and start looking at how they carry themselves and what that professional mindset is. Because ultimately, maybe the dollars are a little less for some guys, but there's professional athletes that we've worked with that are on the practice roster and they are surrounded by a great support team, whether it's a CPA, financial advisor, lawyer. I mean, there's all sorts of things that alleviates the business side for them and allows you to focus on school and football. So for me, just press pause and ask questions, and don't necessarily feel like you have to sign something right away, because that's what's best for you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Winston. Everybody, thanks for watching to the end. Obviously, not my normal studio space. This isn't a reconstruction or anything like that. I am at some work-related stuff here for the next few weeks. Going to be away from our normal space, so all my videos will be in here, and so just let you know they'll all be coming back soon. But if you are interested in any kind of Boise State content, specifically this 2025 season and previews that have come out already, make sure you check out my channel. I have a whole list of previews I got to do with Jonah Dalmez, Alexander Tubner, and also Tyler Crow previewing the offense, defense, and special teams, similar to what I did a few years back with Winston Venable when he was last on. So make sure you check out that playlist. Make sure you like, subscribe. I'll be coming out with my game-by-game previews here pretty soon. College football season's right around the corner. And of course, if you're not a Boise State fan, there are always videos like this on the channel as well, talking about the biggest issues facing college sports, facing anything that's going on with conference realignment. I talk about that as well. So make sure you like and subscribe, whether you're a Boise State fan or not. Thanks so much for coming on, Winston. It's been great to have you.
Hey, I appreciate it. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. And again, make sure, Winston's going to be on Bronco Nation News. So make sure that you guys are subscribing to that as well so you can hear Winston continue to talk on Boise State sports. So thanks so much, everybody, for coming on and sticking all the way to the end. Make sure you put your comments in the bottom below here. What are your thoughts on this changing landscape of college football? What would you do with this NIL world to make it a better situation for the athletes and also for the institutions as well? So give us your thoughts in the comments below. I'll make sure I reply to every one of you. Thanks again, everybody, for sticking all the way to the end. Make sure to like, subscribe, and as always, go Big Blue!